Hello class, welcome to Unit 5 and Creative Project 1 review. This is Professor Wilcox, and sorry about our late start. And joining me is Professor McClellan, and we're going to talk through some of the things that we saw in Creative Project 1 and give some suggestions for those of you who are still working on Creative Project 2, and also talk about some of the ins and outs of Unit 5.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, so welcome. Let's see here. Should we go quickly over some of the homeworks as a start?
Sure.
Okay, I will share my screen.
I will mute to hide my coughing.
All right. Hang on. I know people are mostly, I think, concerned with the creative projects, so we'll focus on that. But all right, so here is the first homework. And you need to be able to identify the type of chord you're looking at. And this requires a few different related skills. First of all, what are the notes? By now, I hope you can read what the notes are, and then knowing where the whole tones and semitones lie given the clef, and therefore what type of thirds are in each chord. So for example, in this one, you have E, and up to the next line is F natural, which is a semitone or half step, and then a whole tone to G. So that's a minor third, and that knowing that is crucial because you then can determine the other intervals and know that this is indeed a minor chord. And then once it has accidentals like flats or sharps, you just have to make the adjustments to identify the chord. So I won't belabor that one, but just again know that it requires a few different components to get the answer right, and knowing and being really careful about your clefs and your accidentals. Actually, did I skip a page? I don't know if I skipped a page, but I will press onward. Triads in the key. Yeah, so this is the same task with a now added task of the context of the key. And now the accidentals are not shown with the chord, but instead shown in the key signature. So you have to remember two things. One is that these three sharps apply to all the same notes. And not only that, the second thing is that they apply in all octaves, not just the octave they're notated. So for example, a great example is right here. We have an F sharp in the key signature. And that means if you track it over horizontally, this F is an F sharp, but so is this F. Even though it's an octave lower and there's no F sharp in front of it, this F sharp covers all octaves. Same thing with the C sharp and same thing with this G sharp. So for example, this G sharp over here is a G sharp. So again, identify the chords. That's the type. Figure out the harmonic function, which is the based on the root note, and luckily these are all in root position, so they're easy to identify in that sense. For this exercise, it's always going to be the bottom note, although as you know that's not always the case. The bass note or bottom note is not always the root. But so for example, here we're in A flat major, and this is an A flat chord because the root is A flat, and because it is in the key of A flat major, you put major, and then you put harmonic function is tonic because A flat is the tonic. So the bottom note is really the defining note in this case. I'm going to go through these quickly because we want to get on to the next thing. More of the same, but now I think.
That being said, if you have questions, please feel free to ask them on the Piazza forum, and we will be more than happy to slow down and answer them.
Yes, absolutely. And when you're in minor, just remember that you have that tricky seventh scale degree, the trickster degree, which can be raised or not raised. And here you have an example of that, where in G minor, F is the seventh scale degree, and when it's in certain situations, it's going to be raised to F sharp, converting it from the subtonic, which is what it would be if it's natural, to the leading tone. And just as a little bit of foreshadowing, that was an issue that came up consistently in the Creative Project 1, is that confusion between leading tone and subtonic. And that's something to be really solid on when you go into Creative Project number 2. So apart from that, this is the same task, but just be aware of these funky other types of chords, augmented or diminished chords, and don't let yourself get intimidated by those strange and interesting chords. Okay, moving on. Luckily, you'll be happy to notice that there are very few homeworks in this unit compared to some of the others. Yeah, so now we have inversions. And I think I mentioned on the Piazza forum, my favorite analogy for this is, if a chord is the human body, then the root note is your feet, and the third, which is the middle note, is your waist, and the top note, the fifth, is your head. And your feet never stop being your feet, even if you tip upside down, stand on your head. And your head never stops being your head. So in other words, the root note is the root note no matter where it is physically up or down in the chord. And that's the key to understanding inversions. And can be a lot of confusion here between the bass note, in other words, the lowest note that happens to be in the chord, versus the root note. And when it's an inversion, the root note is not on the bottom. And so you need to be able to find it and then figure out what the inversion is. So what you might do is do this in reverse, actually. Figure out what the inversion is first, and that can help you then put it into root position. And you could even use some scratch paper to just write out the notes. And so, for example, this first one, you want to get the notes into the closest position they can be in. So if we moved this B flat up here, up an octave, there would still be a gap here, so that we could try moving this G down an octave, and then it would be on this second line. It would make a nice stacked set of thirds. We would then have it in root position. We would then know that G is the root, and then we can go back to step 1. We can now identify the inversion by saying that the third of the chord, the waist, as opposed to the feet or the head, is on the bottom. And I don't know what gymnastics position that indicates, where your waist is on the floor, but I'm sure it's been done. And then that means it's first inversion. So again, multiple steps involved, and be on the lookout for second inversion chords. This is an example right here, just to grab one. If we move this A flat up an octave, that would render this in the close position or root position. Then the D flat would be on the bottom as the root, F as the third, and A flat as the fifth. And when the fifth or top note is on the bottom, it is in second inversion. So yeah. Boop-a-da-boop. What's happening here? So again, I think this is the same, except for we're now including minor chords. Is that the only difference here? I get rusty on these sometimes.
Yeah, I think we have what page 1 is diatonic triads in major, and then page 2 is in minor, I believe.
Okay, good enough. So it's the same concept in minor. And last but not least, homework number 29. Now we add that fourth note, which is when in root position, the fourth note is a seventh, an interval of a seventh away from the root. And that's when it's in root position, and it gives you that nice stacked thirds arrangement with the seventh on top, fifth, third, and root. And the goal here is to adjust the chord to be the given type if it's not already. And be on the lookout, because some of them may be the correct thing already, in which case you don't need to do anything. In that case, just put the letter name of the note just as is. So quick example, we have dominant seventh, and if you know your seventh chords, review the lesson if you're not sure. What we want there is a major third on the bottom, then a minor third between third and fifth, and another minor third between fifth and seventh. And so we need to be solid on our intervals and our thirds. B to D natural is a minor third. Raise it, the D to D sharp. We now need to raise the F to F sharp to make a minor third between D sharp and F sharp, and then F sharp to A is a minor third. So we're all good. And so we need to write D sharp for the third, and F sharp for the fifth, and A just as is for the seventh. And just a bit of a note about the kind of procedure here. You're just matching the numbered notes as you go down the questions. So these numbers have no significance except to help you match up the answer boxes. These are not, a 12th is not a thing in music theory, luckily. Or I'm sure it is, but not in this course. So yeah, and then it's just repeated. The same image is repeated for reference. So it's just a little bit requires a little bit of care to make sure that you're following the procedure here. And then again, the same procedure with diminished seventh chords, which are all minor thirds. So quick example: F sharp to A is already a minor third. A to C is already a minor third. C to E natural is a major third, so lower the E to E flat. And then we would just put A, C, and E flat. So that's it for that one. Let's jump into the nitty-gritty, the good stuff. Yeah, so just briefly, one question that already came up, I can just quickly mention now, is how the chords should be formatted. And I just want to show a sample. We're looking for something really basic. So if you have done music before, you play the piano, or you're familiar in some way, this might feel kind of almost simplistic to you because the texture, the musical texture, is so basic. But that's deliberate because we want to achieve clarity and simplicity so that you can focus on your melody and so on. So we're really just looking for kind of block chords like this. And you'll note that I have an A minor chord down here, and I've put an A in the melody. And then I can have a tone that's not in the chord. And then I maybe want another tone that is in the chord. So I'd put that there. But this came up in the Creative Project one also. Stem direction. If it's above the middle line, we want the stem going down. So that is the right note, but not the right stem direction. So that would be a nice little measure that you could compose. Whoops. That's kind of the general look we're going for. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and we have the requirement that notes from the melody need to match the chord, because when you listen to a piece of music, the melody you sing will contain primarily notes from the harmony that's underpinning it.
Exactly.
We were getting a lot of creative projects where people would just put the same chord over and over again. It had, or chords that had no relationship to the melody, and we really want to, if we want to hear about your musical choices as it relates to the poem, then we need to hear about all your choices, and that includes supporting your eerie or your aggressive or your happy melody with eerie, aggressive, and happy chords. So there needs to be some connection between your melody and your harmony.
Absolutely, yeah. And so in this measure, out of 3 notes, 2 of them are chord tones, A and C. So that's maybe a generally good proportion to keep in mind, like 2/3 or more, maybe, something like that. At least half, I would say, of the notes should be chord tones. And then notice I put this bar line. I neglected to put a time signature, but of course that's important.
We did get a question about 7th chords, and
yes,
the requirement is that one of your chords of your 8 needs to be a 7th chord. Now, if it was me, I would make a dominant chord, a chord built off your 5th scale degree, with a 7th in your second to last measure, because that will set up a return to your tonic on the last chord. So I would build my second to last measure with a dominant 7, and I would put a tonic chord, hopefully in root position, on your final bar. But you only need 1 7th chord. You can have more, but you only have to have 1.
I'm trying to live up to your description in my sample right here. So I'm in A minor, and actually I just broke a rule. I think this D should be in the bass clef with a ledger line. Hang on. Oop. Oh, and I think I needed to place my ledger line first. Let's just pretend I placed it first. I'm just going to move my whole chord. Wait a minute, what did I do wrong? Anyway, point being that that's my dominant 7th chord, E, G sharp, B, and D in the key of A minor, E being the 5th scale degree. And then I would go back to a nice A minor chord on the if this were the end of my melody and I had done a bunch of other stuff in between, this would be my final section. And that was, I think, a big issue in Creative Project 1 in my sections was just confusion about ending with the leading tone to tonic. Some people had the issue with using the subtonic if they were in minor, or some people ended on the leading tone, which isn't, you really need the tonic at the end because it's the sense of finality and that kind of thing. So just review that, because that's really, it's a little tricky and it's important. So I hate to leave my messy little thing here. What? Anyway, just imagine this ledger line was right over here in between those 2 notes. Should we look at the rubric to sort of review some major points, or should I demonstrate some more?
Yeah, well, we've got a request to demonstrate how to show an inversion in your score. And remember, along with your score, we want you to identify these chords. So one way to show an inversion would be to write a tonic chord, or write your chord and then put the number 6. That indicates first inversion. Or write D chord first inversion. But you also have to notate that inverted chord. So Robin's going to show us how to notate an inverted chord on the staff there.
Yeah, in fact, I'm going to mess with this. I'm going to make my dominant 7th chord be an inverted chord in a really clever and cool way, which you're going to love, which also gets rid of my ledger line problem at the same time. So what I'm doing is I'm moving the 3rd of the chord down an octave. Now, I didn't love my sharp placement. Sharp placement has to be really precise. It's still not perfect, but close enough for now. and then I'm moving my fifth of the chord down just to be closer to the third, and then I'm moving my seventh down as well. And this is a little funky element of music notation. When two notes are a second apart, they sort of have to be off to the side. So this is my seventh chord in first inversion, because the third is now on the bottom. And the reason I said that you'd think it was really cool is that now in the lowest part, I have my leading tone going to the tonic. And that shows you really clearly that kind of melodic principle that you practiced in Creative Project 1 now manifested in chords. So
well, we had a request also. We're getting people chatting on YouTube as well.
okay.
The request is to repeat what I said about seventh chords, and the main message is you only need one seventh chord. But since we ask you to start on the tonic and end on the tonic, and we say that your second to last note needs to be a supertonic or a dominant or a leading tone, I believe those are the options. We essentially say your second to last note needs to be one of the notes of your dominant chord. So my suggestion is that in your seventh bar, your second to last bar, the chord you add there is a dominant seventh chord, a seventh chord built on your dominant scale degree, and then in your final bar, you write your tonic chord. So you get what Professor McClellan just showed you with that chord inversion, the dominant moving to the tonic. But regardless, if you don't choose to do that, you only need one seventh chord.
Yep, and that little demo, by the way, I accidentally closed my window and I lost my beautiful dominant to tonic motion in A minor. But it's actually for the better, because I broke a rule which was also an issue in Creative Project 1. And of course I did on purpose. It was all just a test to see if anybody noticed a terrible, fatal flaw with my sample that I was just doing, which was that it was in A minor. You may say, there's nothing wrong with A minor. And that's true, except that it doesn't match the assignment, which was to write in a key with at least two sharps or flats in the scale or the key, which is not the case with A minor. So a better example would have been something like B minor or E flat major, which has two sharps or three flats respectively. So choose your key and your scale carefully. And we got a lot of Creative Project 1s like in C major or F major or A minor, which are all keys with not enough sharps and flats. And the reason we ask that is because we like to just make it a little more challenging, so to let you show us that you understand key signatures and working with scales that have more sharps and flats in the key signature. So be aware of that as well.
And we are very specific. And I remember, sitting in our little talks here on Creative Project 1 and saying, I will get so many subtonics, so many. And I would say that of the people who wrote in a minor key, which is a good number because it's sort of a minor-ish poem, of those people, 85 to 90% of them gave me a subtonic instead of a leading tone.
Yeah.
So that is really important. We want you to understand that in most pieces of music, the leading tone is what you'll find. And when you move and add chords, your dominant chord needs to have the raised 7th scale degree in it. It needs to have that leading tone. So that's why we ask you to do it. And we don't want a subtonic. We want to see that you understand the difference between subtonic and leading tone. And I'm going to say it right here again. I'm going to see so many subtonics when I grade this that I literally keep certain things like archived and ready to just copy into the responses. This is a subtonic, not a leading tone.
Yep, I have a little list like that too. Template. Often used phrases like missing leading tone or key doesn't have enough sharps or flats, that kind of thing. So if you got one of those, you now know that I copy pasted it.
Yes. And we're getting a request, Robin, if you want to maybe, we're getting a request to demo another 7th chord. So maybe just demoing a couple.
Yeah, I'll do one in a more interesting key. Let's see, what's a good key? Maybe E flat, because I mentioned that before. And what I'll do is, actually I want one that stacks up better. I'll do A flat, which has 4 flats. So I'm going to put it in root position first, and then I'll just move the notes around to show a couple different inversions. So first I'm building the A chord. Whoops, I'm not good at dropping the notes. I'm too attached to them. I love my little notes. So A flat is the root, major, third, and this is a process you know make sure you're good on. And by the way, just while I'm here, accidentals have to be horizontally aligned with the note in front of the note. They can't be just above or below or after the note or near the note. They have to be right there. So then A flat to C is a major third, which is a dominant, which is the first interval of a dominant 7th. Then I need an E flat to be a minor third from C to E flat. And then, wait a minute. I've gotten myself mixed up because I said I was going to be in the key of A flat, which doesn't actually have an A flat dominant 7th in the key. So now I've backed myself into a corner where I have to go to the next key, which is D flat. But that's just all that makes it all the more exciting. So this is the dominant 7th chord in D flat major, meaning that A flat is the 5th scale degree, and I have a major third and then a minor third and another minor third. So I'm now going to put it in an inversion by taking the A flat and moving it up an octave. And this is also a good demonstration of what happens when you get a lot of accidentals kind of stuck together and they gets a little crowded, but that's okay. So now the third of the chord is on the bottom in the bass, and that means it's first inversion. I'm going to do it again, and this time I'm going to place my ledger line first. I think that's what I'm supposed to do. Yeah. Wait a minute. I'm having ledger line issues. But I'm not going to worry about that.
You need to grab a new note and then place it on top.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Thank you. So I'm going to put my ledger line, and I'm going to get rid of my note. And I'm going to grab a new note. So now I've put my C up high here, and now the E flat, which is the 5th of the chord, is now on the bottom, and this is now in second inversion. And then what's very exciting is that with 7th chords, you can actually have a third inversion. This is going to look a little messy, but just forgive me. Now I'm putting my E flat on top. Oops. And then I have to get rid of this E. And now my G flat is in the bass, and that's the 7th of the chord, and that's the third inversion, which doesn't exist for triads, but does exist for 7th chords. So I hope that it looks a little messy, but I hope that's a decent demo of 7th chords and inversions.
So I did want to say, because we're getting some questions here and there, and I'm watching Professor McClellan use the tool, and you might think to yourself, well, why do we use this tool? You know, there's lots of software programs that will do this for you. Here's the thing. The software programs do too much for you. They put the key signature on there in the correct order. They make sure you have enough beats in the bar. They play it back for you. They allow you to make mistakes that you wouldn't make if you were writing, or you couldn't make. or it fixes things for you. It's like using a word processor. If you type into a word processor, it'll say, this is spelled wrong, or did you mean this, or your grammar is wrong here. That's not what we want. We want you to have the experience of writing on paper. We want to see what you truly understand. So when you write on a piece of paper or use the tool, yeah, it's tedious and yeah, it can be annoying, but we really have a sense of what you understand and what you don't understand. We can see, well, they don't really understand proportional notation, or they don't really understand stem directions. A lot of notation programs will automatically put your stems in the right direction, and we don't want that. So even though the tool is a little clunky, even though it's a little tedious, it's intended to be that way. If you would prefer, you can download a piece of music paper. They're all over the internet. Just put in free music paper and download a piece and write it out and take a picture or a screenshot and send that in, if that would be easier for you. But for right now, the tool allows us to have you have that experience of notating and potentially making catastrophic errors and all sorts of strangeness, because that's the experience of learning to compose, learning to write music. And now we did have a question about key signatures. What we mean by that is we do not want you to put the key signature on the left. We want you to write the notes in. And a lot of that is, again, so that we see that you understand for every note that you place what the scale degree of that note is, and what the harmonic function of that note is, and what the tendency of that note is, and what the tendency of the notes in the harmony are. We want to see that you are understanding, that you are living inside the key you're working in. Some people just throw up a key signature and they then proceed to ignore the fact that they've added a key signature. So we actually want you to write the notes in. And yes, it's a little tedious, but there's reasons we're having you do these things. So we don't really want to see a key signature on the left. We want to see you add notes in. And remember, if you have a note that's like an A flat, and later in the bar you want an A natural, you need to put that natural sign, because you're canceling out an accidental. What do you have something to add, Robin?
No, that's it. I just posted a link to this free manuscript paper that you can download and write by hand, and then take a scan or a photo if you prefer. Again, the online tool is really just for to make it possible to do it entirely in the web browser, but it doesn't mean you have to use this tool. Just again, what you cannot use is a music notation software program like Finale or Noteflight or MuseScore.
We are getting a question. They want to see the difference between subtonic and leading tone, which is a great question.
It is a great question. So I'm going to stay, well, no, I'm not going to stay in D flat, because that would put me in D flat minor, which is, we don't want to go there. That's a key with lots of crazy, I don't even know if that key fully exists. So let me build, actually, I'm going to do the melody this time, rather than a note, rather than a chord. And I'm just going to, let's see, what's a good key? Let's go G minor for now, which has 2 sharps and flats. And I'm going to build a short little melody. Da, da, da. And I'm going to put the accidentals as I go. So this is going up the scale in G minor, tonic, supertonic, mediant. Now I'm going to go back down the scale. Whoops, not what I wanted. It's a very short melody in the interest of time. And I'm back to the tonic. And now if I go to the note below the tonic, the 7th scale degree, so the scale again is G, A, B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G. That's the natural minor. And F is the seventh and last scale degree before you get back to G. And in its natural state, it's an F natural. And that would be the subtonic. And if you're not sure, if you ever need to double check that, what I find the easiest is to check the interval between the tonic and that seventh scale degree. So G to F or F to G is a whole tone. And if you find that you have a whole tone between scale degree 7 and 8 or 7 and 1, it's going to be the subtonic. What makes it the leading tone is if you raise that subtonic one semitone usually using a sharp. If that note happens to already be a flat, then you would use a natural. Maybe I'll show that as well. And now you have a semitone between G and F sharp, and that means it's the leading tone. So that, I guess, the defining feature, if you want a definition of what makes it a leading tone and not a subtonic, is the interval between that seventh scale degree and the tonic. And if it's a semitone, it's the leading tone. And note that the F sharp is not in the key signature. It's sort of an added tone that is special, and it makes it the leading tone. I said I would make, yeah, so let me see. What's a key with a flat as the seventh scale degree? I'm going to say B flat minor. I'm just going to convert. Is it too confusing just to convert this? I don't think so. So I'm going to say that I'm now in the key of B flat minor, which means that I have a lot of flats because the key signature is 5 flats. Oops. And I'm now on scale degree 6, 7, 8. And again, the definition of subtonic to tonic is if it's a subtonic, it's a whole tone between those two notes, A flat to B flat. If I want it to be a leading tone, now I'm going to have to make that A flat into an A natural. So it's the same thing I did before. I'm raising it by a semitone from its A flat state to an A natural, just the same way that I raised the F natural a semitone using a sharp. I'm just going to move that to avoid confusion. And one small flaw with this example is that I've actually constructed a melodic minor scale backwards, where it's flats on the way up and naturals on the way down. It should be the other way around, but you get the idea. What else?
Well, we've got a request to show what we're looking for the table.
Oh, yeah.
So let me, I actually have, let me share my screen for a change. Let me see. Which is, oh, there it is. All right. Let me pull up, hold on for a second. Sorry, I know this is a lot of fun watching me sort through my computer.
We somehow managed to both be wearing plaid.
I'm always wearing plaid. I don't think that's an accomplishment.
I'm very often wearing plaid. I'm trying to downsize my plaid wardrobe, actually. Replace it.
Okay, so here's an example, one of my consistently high-performing students. And you can see for each bar, he's listed the chord associated with it. So bar 1 is a C minor chord, 5-3, which is under a root. He could have put root position. So just he made a little table in Word, and for each measure, he listed the chord that was present. He also wrote the chord underneath this, and I appreciate this sort of clarity. It's very clear of what's going on.
Yep. Yeah, that's a very nice example.
I had it close at hand for some reason. His work seems to be coming up a lot recently, so
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
yeah, so we have another question. What if the note is already sharp, for instance, C sharp? I think you're, again, asking about the key signature. So essentially what we're saying is instead of writing the key signature on the left, just actually attach the accidentals to the notes themselves. So if you're writing in D major and you want to have a C sharp, we want you to put a C sharp next to the C.
And I just to double check,
Like Robin has there on his score.
The question may also be like, are you asking if the subtonic is already a sharp, and if you need to raise it to be the leading tone, what do you do? I don't know if that might be the question as well.
It's possible.
And I'm trying to think. I can't think.
You could put two sharps next to each other. That is a convention I've seen.
Yeah, that's true. There is a symbol called a double sharp, which we don't have here. It's just an X. So if you're doing it by hand, you could do that. There aren't many keys. You have to be in a key with a lot of crazy sharps and stuff for the subtonic to have a sharp. So it's not likely that will happen to you if that was the question. But if it does, you can use a double sharp or two sharps. What else?
Well, is there anything else we want to say just generally about the creative projects?
I was going to say, sorry, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to, say it's really, a lot of it comes down to the analysis. And though it's nice to hear your analysis of the poem in question, some of the papers I've gotten have, 2/3 of the papers analyzing the poem. And I understand that that's the easiest part, but really we want to hear about why you made specific musical decisions in reference to the poem. And so a lot of times what I see are papers that just aren't that specific. I went up, I went down. For this part of the poem, I thought I went up, but this seemed like down, so I went down. I mean, it's just very vague. What I prefer to hear is, oh, the part where he talks about the horse jingling the bells in the previous poem. In that part, I chose to, move the rhythms quicker, and I chose to alternate between two pitches because to me that sounded like bells. I want to hear something specific. I want to hear something. I made these specific musical decisions in this specific place to reflect what was in the poem, not just a general, oh, I did this and then I did that and then I did one of those, and that seemed to me to be similar to, it was just, vagueness doesn't really, it's not that exciting. I want to hear, really like, not that you're trying to capture every aspect of the poem, but I want to hear, how your musical choices resonate with what you're seeing in the poem. And I don't want you to be vague about it. I want you to be very specific.
Yeah, and I was going to add that if I were doing this assignment, I would keep these rubrics close at hand as my Bible. And after I do each step, reread this word for word and make sure I did exactly what it said, and then reread it again when I've done the entire thing. Because there's little details that, like the way I think it goes for people, I'm guessing, is they read it, they get the idea, they do the assignment, and along the way, little details get lost in their mind. And so just go back to this, because if you do that, you'll be sure to hit every single point. And again, our goal here is for you to have all the tools you need to do well. And if you just hit every one of these points, point by point, you will do well. Like it's that simple. You don't have to be any kind of musical genius or have any special talent at all. It's a very mechanical, step-by-step kind of work. So I would
I've given out a lot of A's from people who clearly are not musical geniuses, but are very good at following directions. And being thoughtful about what they're doing. So
Yeah,
certainly, some
and
of the best papers were by people who said, "This is the first time I've done something like this, but here's what I'm trying, or here's what I'm proposing."
yeah, and conversely, I've seen melodies where it's clear the person has some musical experience and they're very comfortable with notating on the staff, and they write a lovely melody, and they just forget whole sections of the rubric and they get a B or a C. So it's not about ability; it's about following directions in a sense. And we hope you'll still have fun with it. We don't want to take the fun out of it, but to do well, keep these close, print them out, maybe put them on the wall in front of you as you're doing it, and highlight every little keyword or whatever works for you. But these rubrics are really crucial. So I think that's all I have.
And spell check, golly.
Yeah,
it is college.
yeah.
It is a homework assignment. I'm not the best spell checker. I'm not the best copy editor. I have a little program called Grammarly, which I downloaded, which kind of gives me prompts for commas and checks my spelling and make sure what I'm writing makes sense. And that's good as a single pass. But some people, aren't even fixing, pretty egregious spelling errors. And it's median, not median. So just because Word suggests you change something doesn't mean it's gonna point you in the right direction. That's a real common thing.
Absolutely.
So do take some time. But we really enjoyed looking at your creative project once. It took us a long time, and we were a little waylaid with some other error issues. But we enjoyed looking through all 300 of them or something like that. And and we'll start cranking through your creative project 2s quickly, because we have to get the grades in. So please, hopefully, please you'll contact us if you have questions. Send us samples of what you're working on if you want our feedback, and ask questions because we're here to help. Is there anything else you want to mention?
One other thing is, don't turn it in late, because we have a pretty steep point docking policy for late submissions, just simply because we have to keep with so many assignments coming in, we just have to keep things organized. So 5% off for the first day late, or sorry, 10% off for the first day, and then 5% for each day after that. It can bring your grade down pretty fast. And it's 11:59 p.m. sharp tomorrow night is the due date. No ifs, ands, or buts. And don't start late, because if there's technical issues with their Dropbox or something, we can't help with that, sadly.
And please don't email it to us.
Yeah,
that's death, because I get, besides this job, I have another job, and we get a ton of email from different sources all the time, and your file will easily get lost in my inbox. If you have a file, just submit it in the Dropbox area. If I write a comment in your submission asking you to resubmit the audio, then put it in the Dropbox area. That's a good place to put things. That's a good place to add comments too, because I can see there. I won't forget it. I won't miss it. I won't misplace it. Just use the Dropbox, please. Don't email us files. I can't tell you how many embarrassing situations. Oh, I sent that to you a month ago. Oh, crap. You're right. All right. So I'm going to sign off because my dinner is long since ready. And we apologize for the long start. Yes.
But
good night, all.
Good night. You're all doing a great job. Keep up the good work.
Yep. Very impressed. And thanks for all the great participation in the forum tonight.
Yep.
All right. Bye-bye.